Happiness comes from within. It comes from getting yourself in order, getting your thinking in order, not trying to control the world.
One step to improve your sense of happiness is go first.
People are happier when they are generous and when they feel that the society that they're in is a generous society.
I think the best short definition of what hygge is the art of creating a nice atmosphere.
There's still this very strong sense of family, friends, community.
Best thing I can tell you to do today is save more now.
When you go give birth, it's almost free. We stayed in the hospital for 3 days. It's basically like living in a hotel.
To be glad is more like our mindset. So I feel more like I choose to be glad at times rather than sort of trying to chase happiness, because that seems like it's never going to happen that way.
Yes, drool all over mommy. That's exactly what we need right now.
My name is Maria Aino MacDonald. I'm 30 years old and I live in Helsinki, Finland.
Here I am, walking to work. I just took a train.
I was born in Helsinki and I've always liked Helsinki. You have the sea nearby, you have a lot of nature, a lot of parks, forests, but still the city life. In Finland, it's been this kind of rule that you don't talk about money that much. It would be considered bragging if you would tell about how much you make, etc. And still you find many people, even young people, that wouldn't tell you how much they make. I live with my husband, Duke. He's a musician and we've been together for 10 years now. And we have a son, 2-year-old Luca, and a dog, 8 years old. I've been talking with my husband about the situation that I make a little bit more at the moment, but he says that it doesn't bother him, which is great because it obviously doesn't bother me. In our case, it has always kind of just been like, okay, whoever has the money pays for it kind of thing. When I was studying and he was working, he was paying more. Now that I'm making a little bit more money, then I'm, paying a little bit extra. But I think it's like, with us, it's kind of like, okay, I pay for Lucas' daycare, so do you pay the car? Okay, let's do it. So in Finland, you don't pay anything for university. I mean, maybe some books or something. In Finland, we have this amazing system for young people buying their first homes, that if you have 10% of the money saved for the apartment, so in my case, my first apartment was 175,000. If I had that 17,500 saved in that saving account, the government would guarantee my loan for the bank. I took student loan out and put it on that account so that by the time being that I would stop my studies, I could have the 10% there to buy that house. I see buying an apartment basically as an investment, especially if you buy it in Helsinki or in any city where the prices are basically just going up all the time. In Finland, the healthcare is amazing, like the municipal one, and I have a lucky situation of my mom being a pediatrician. So if I ever have like an emergency or ear infection or any other things, I just, take my son to my mom's and ask, fix him. I don't pay basically anything on my healthcare. Of course, when I pay taxes, some of that money will go to the healthcare. Finland is the best place to have kids. The maternity leave is long. You get about 3 months with full salary and then 6 months with 75% salary. And after that even, so after 9 months, you still have a possibility to stay home if you want, but then you get about 500 a month. I started playing basketball when I was 8 years old, so I've been playing ever since. I used to play like 7 times a week, but ever since, I started working and, becoming boring adult, I've been doing like 2 times a week plus the games during the weekends.
A plane? Do you hear a plane? Where is it?
I've been mostly to Mexico lately because my husband's father lives there. So of course now that especially that we have Luca, his grandson, we go to see abuelo, so their granddad, every year to Mexico. I am super bad at planning the grocery stuff. So basically, if I really wanted to save money, I would start doing like, okay, what do we eat next week? And then I would buy like a bunch of stuff and I could, make soup out of Monday's leftovers or something like that. I like food and I like good food. So basically, I'm buying whatever ingredients I want, whenever I feel like it. I don't do my work because of money, like I do my work because I enjoy it. But I did read somewhere again, like that your happiness level rises up to 70,000 per year. I would say maybe that 70,000 a year would be my kind of goal in life. My best thing is that I've organized everything with the bank so that when my salary comes on the 23rd, my mortgage goes right away from that. And then I know that I have to pay the maintenance and the daycare around, this time. And whatever money I have left after that, then I can kind of see if I can do any big investments or anything. I think it's really important that I'm in a lucky situation that I have extra money every month, since I don't have to worry about my healthcare or ever being hungry or anything. I think it's really important that I help others.
So what makes people happy? I wrote a book called The Happiness Hypothesis, Finding Modern Truth in Ancient Wisdom, which meant I looked at psychological ideas east and west from various millennia, and I tried to evaluate which insights from the ancients were correct. What I found is that many people think that happiness comes from getting what you want, but most people who've thought about the matter know that when we get what we want, it feels good, but only for a very short time. That doesn't bring us lasting happiness. The more common view is that happiness comes from within. It comes from getting yourself in order, getting your thinking in order, not trying to control the world. But this view counsels detachment. It says, don't try to change the world at all, just work on yourself. And I think that's not really the best way, especially for those of us living in a modern world where we actually are very safe physically and where we actually can make long-term plans. So the conclusion I came to at the end is that happiness is best described as coming from between. That is, if you get the right kind of relationship between yourself and other people, yourself and your work, and yourself and something larger than yourself. If you get those 3 relationships right, if you get embedded in the right way, it will draw you out into the world. It will engage your passions. It will give you the kind of support that you need and want, and it'll give you a sense of meaning and purpose in life. So once you see this, once you see that you've got to get your relationships right, what do? Well, yourself and others. There's a lot of research in positive psychology showing that gratitude, cultivating gratitude, expressing gratitude, strengthens relationships. In some studies, expressing gratitude has the same effect, elevating mood, as taking Prozac. Trying to create a group of friends, don't just focus on one romantic partner. Focus on finding a group of friends who hang out and do things together. Second, yourself and your work. If you want to find the right job for you, it helps to know what your strengths are. To the extent that you get to use your strengths every day in your work, you're more likely to thrive, you're more likely to feel that you've gotten the right relationship between yourself, who you are with your unique strengths, and the work that you're doing every day. And the third relationship is between yourself and something larger than yourself. The happiest people are people who are deeply embedded in a community. It can be a religious community, it can be a professional community, it can be their neighborhood. People thrive when they're not just individuals with a lot of freedom floating around. Even though they often think they want that, they tend to be happiest when they're embedded in a group, in a community, especially if it's one that has values that they respect, as though you're on a team pursuing a noble end. That is a recipe for doing about as well as a person can do. Love, work, and a connection to something larger than yourself.
This is hygge.
Hygge.
It's the Danish art of cozying up. Hygge is more of a mindset than a thing, and it's been hiding in plain sight in America for decades. You can find hygge in products like Ugg boots, diptyque candles, IKEA sheepskin rugs, and fuzzy Patagonia vests. Hot toddies and hot apple cider, chocolates, cookies, and cakes. Add it all up, and that's a recipe for a hyggelig evening.
I mean, if it's about eating bad food and wearing my fat pants, I've been hyggeing for years.
Here's how hygge took over America. Meet Mike Viking. He wrote the book on hygge. Literally.
I think the best short definition of what hygge is the art of creating a nice atmosphere. And of course, that is something that happens everywhere. But what is uniquely Danish is we have a word that describes that situation.
There's a reason hygge comes from Denmark. Northern European countries get fewer hours of daylight during winter months, and that can have a dramatic effect on folks' well-being.
Data indicate that the further north you go in general, the higher the prevalence of winter depression.
In the depths of winter, Danes get as little as 7 hours of daylight.
So in Denmark, hygge also happens in the summertime. It's wonderful and it's hyggelig to have a picnic in the park with your friends or a barbecue. But I think hygge is almost a survival strategy for winter when there is this duvet of darkness that sort of covers the country from 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Exposure to this much darkness, or a decreased photo period as it's called, can lead to winter depression. Dr. Avery says hygge is a natural way to combat seasonal depression during long, dark, cold months. He says humans, like bears, prepare themselves for the long winter by eating more calories and preparing their living quarters for the months ahead.
In the animal kingdom, bears, for example, when the photo period decreases, they start eating more nuts and berries and put on a good fat pad in preparation for the calorie-deficient winter. Human beings probably also have some mechanisms to do that as well.
That's why things like thick blankets, sweets, alcohol, and warm clothes are trademarks of hygge. In a way, it's the Danish take on hibernation. But there's one big difference between Danes and bears when it comes to hibernation.
One concrete manifestation of hygge is the focus on lighting, because the atmosphere in the room is important to Danes because of the culture around hygge. So the rule of thumb is the warmer the light, the more hyggelig the light.
Each Dane burns on average 13 pounds of candle wax per year. It's hyggelig to gather around the fireplace, play board games, have a long chat, and share a meal or a drink with family and friends. That said, you can totally hygge alone. As an American Dane, Lars AP connects with his Danish side through hygge.
You can curl up in a couch and read a good book and have good music on and just be in a hyggekrog, which is sort of it actually means a hygge corner of your room. But oftentimes I'd say hygge is really, there's a social component to hygge, which I think is really important and I love, obviously.
Monica and Alex Calvert are expats who've come to embrace hygge as a winter survival tactic.
And that was a surprise actually coming to Denmark. We worried about the long nights, but actually if you're walking in the streets, there's fires and candles in the windows, and there's heaters out that are glowing with everyone sitting around in blankets having a good chat. So do a very good job, I think, of making winter palatable.
The shared suffering during those long winters turned hygge into a Danish tradition.
It's something I grew up with and something that Danes see as part of our national identity, part of our culture. Perhaps a little bit the same way that Americans see freedom as something inherently American, Danes would see hygge as something inherently Danish.
Once you start comparing cultures on things like happiness, their differences come into focus.
The reports of Americans on their sense of happiness is pretty alarming. Over the past half century, it has fluctuated even as incomes have soared. America is a country dedicated to getting richer, but it is not getting happier.
Mike Viking says there are two reasons hygge is catching on in America. First, the growing sense that money can't buy happiness. And second, the perception that Nordic countries have the highest quality of life in the world.
I think the combination of the two sort of became the foundation for the interest in Danish things and hygge being one of them.
He makes a good point. Levels of stress, depression, and anxiety are at an all-time high in America. Generally, Americans are stressed because they spend too much time working and not enough time relaxing. While Americans took an average of 17.2 vacation days in 2017, Danes could expect 36 days of paid vacation, or more than double that of the US.
Our balance of paid work versus community activities and leisure itself is out of kilter. Leisure is something we should be enjoying right now. We shouldn't be in a time of anxiety and suffering right now, which so many people are.
The US is the only advanced economy that doesn't guarantee its workers any paid vacation time. Denmark is in line with other European countries. France, Germany, Spain, and the UK guarantee more than 30 days of vacation time to workers compared to the 10 public holidays in the US, which aren't even guaranteed to come with pay. Stress levels are also lower in Denmark than in the US. And nearly every Nordic country ranked higher than the US in the 2019 World Happiness Report. But there's another variable in the happiness equation: screen time. Experts say embracing hygge and going analog may help combat depression.
There's some positive aspects to hygge, such as minimizing the amount of light exposure that we have to screens, our computers and TVs in the late evenings.
The funny thing is, Americans have been incorporating hygge into their lives without knowing it. Just flip through any home decor catalog and you'll notice the Danish influence.
People aren't asking specifically for hygge, but they are asking for elements of hygge, like the soft lighting, the really texturized throws, a lot of pillows. While people are designing minimal spaces, they don't want their homes to feel cold. Everybody wants a warm and welcoming space.
So hygge is now a prepackaged, mass-produced thing you can buy in the US. You'd think Danes would be happy that hygge has gone global, but as it becomes a worldwide phenomenon, some fear the essence of hygge is being lost in translation. Oliver Enne, a creative director, doesn't love that Americans have embraced hygge.
As a Dane who follows media outlets in the US, I hate the word hygge. It doesn't do anything that the word coziness doesn't do. It's the same word, and I don't really know what it means that is exclusive to Danish culture at the very least.
When hygge hit the US, it hit hard. The internet is teeming with hygge games, hygge books, hygge blankets, candles, subscription boxes. And exploiting hygge is very not hygge.
All the components of hygge I like, like being around people, having conversations, being indoors when it's raining. Like, who doesn't love that shit? But the idea of saying it, and I think especially the idea of planning for hygge, is gross to me. Like, you can only say it in retrospect. Like, that was hyggeligt.
But even a watered-down version still has the power to alleviate some stress and spark joy.
Peel away the commercial label of what it is. At the core of it, it's a serotonin booster. Now, when you look at it through the lens of neuroscience, you can understand which societies We want a little more of it. I say in the US, we can't do without enough of it. We need more of it in our society today. And I think that commercial offerings that bundle them and put them together are very valuable. And this is a very good thing. It's a good thing. It is, yeah, there is a commercial aspect to it. So what? So what?
But hygge isn't about any one thing.
There'll be warmth, there'll be candles, there'll be music, and there'll be incense. And there is ritual. Ritual. And the repetition of those rituals are hygge at its core.
There's a formula for how much money you should have for retirement based on your age, so let me give it to you. I get asked on the street all the time by people, David, how much money should I have saved? How much should I have saved at 30 or 40 or 50 or 60? Well, it turns out there's actually a formula. At 30, you want to have 1 times your salary. That's your annual salary. At 35, 2 times. At 40, 3 times. At 45, 4 times. At 50, 6 times. At 55, 7 times. At 68 times. By 67, 10 times. So that's a great formula. But remember, it's a generic formula, so you might need to be saving more than that. You definitely don't need to be saving less than that. So how do you get to those numbers? Well, here's what Fidelity recommends, and I completely agree with them. They recommend saving 15% of your income. If you watched me before on these videos, you know I recommend saving 1 hour a day of your income minimum. That's 12.5% of your gross income, and if you've got a 401k plan and they match, you're gonna get to that 15%. That's how you'll get to these numbers. Now, how does the money need to be invested to get to these numbers? Well, again, back to Fidelity's research, they recommend 50% in equities and 50% in bonds. So it's basically a balanced approach to investing. But here's what I can tell you. Whatever your situation is right now, if you're 30 or 40 or 50 and you're comparing this to where you are or want to be, the best thing I can tell you to do today is save more now. After you get done watching this video, go back to your 401k plan, increase what you're saving by at least 1 or 2%. That'll get you back up to these numbers that you want to be at. You can do it.
Imagine a sum of cash deposited in your bank account every month for doing absolutely nothing. That's the gist of universal basic income. And the idea is catching on.
Universal basic income. Universal basic income.
Universal basic income. Money for nothing.
Guaranteed income in the background every month.
But is the American public, which has historically championed the idea that anyone can succeed through hard work, ready for UBI? The International Monetary Fund defines universal basic income as payments made to a large population with minimal or no strings attached.
The basic idea is a guaranteed equal allotment for everybody, giving ultimate freedom for people to do what they want.
What would you do with the money? And how would it change your life?
Maybe create a business with it.
A better school, for example, for my kids.
Start up a trust fund for my daughter.
Invest in cryptocurrency.
Maybe I'll go travel or just buy some sneakers.
Universal basic income is making its way from the fringes to a serious topic of debate thanks to a growing number of high-profile advocates.
I do think there's a pretty good chance we end up with a universal basic income or something like that due to automation.
We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
This universal basic income would be the greatest catalyst to entrepreneurship and creativity that we've ever seen.
Google searches for the term universal basic income have multiplied as much as 50 times between 2015 and 2019. So why is the idea of the government handing out free money gaining popularity?
The main reason why universal basic income is in discussion the way it is there's a huge and widening level of inequality in the United States. The gaps between the rich and the poor have widened considerably, and there is a sense that this may well continue, especially as robotics and artificial intelligence continue to replace jobs. So the notion is that with certain classes of jobs disappearing, not only will inequality widen, but some people may not be able to find gainful employment, but as human beings, they should have guaranteed dignity and basic needs met.
By 2030, automation could displace up to a third of jobs worldwide. And nearly 40% of jobs in the US could be automated by the early 2030s. The jobs most at risk involve repetitive physical activity, including clerical, manufacturing, and transportation work.
Andrew Yang, one!
That's why serial entrepreneur and 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang is promising an unconditional payment of $1,000 per month, which he calls a freedom dividend, to every adult US citizen, if he wins his long-shot bid for the presidency. Under his plan, people would have a choice between $1,000 each month to spend as they please, or traditional welfare benefits like food stamps or disability. Yang says the payment is a way to appeal to many of the voters who contributed to President Trump's victory in 2016.
I would never be running if Donald Trump hadn't won the election of 2016. The bell really went off where I was like, I'm going to run for president, when I was doing research about what I thought helped Donald Trump win, which is that we'd automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa, all the swing states he needed to win, and did win. And when I found that that was the central driver, I said, someone needs to make this case to the American people that it's not immigrants, it's technology.
The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities estimates the cost of Yang's plan would be more than $3 trillion a year. But Yang says the figure would come in closer to $1.8 trillion, because many people might choose welfare benefits over UBI checks.
If you show up to someone and say, hey, would you rather $1,000 cash and they're already getting $1,400 and a range of benefits, then it doesn't cost you anything extra, because they'll say, no thanks, I like my benefits.
To help pay for his plan, Yang proposes a 10% value-added tax on goods and services. A value-added tax is a consumption tax that is charged when an individual or a business makes a purchase, commonly referred to as VAT. The Tax Policy Center told CNBC Make It that a 10% value-added tax could raise anywhere from $500 billion to $1 trillion per year, depending on how broadly it's applied. An overwhelming majority of countries in the world already have a value-added tax in place. Some leading economists are skeptical that the U.S. can afford to pay its citizens a universal basic income.
I'm not a UBI guy, not now. Either it's going to cost an amount that's beyond what I expect to be politically possible in the next several decades, or it's going to be way inadequate.
A UBI pilot program in Ontario, Canada, was cancelled last year because of its quote-unquote extraordinary cost for Ontario taxpayers. 4,000 low-income Canadians were supposed to receive varying monthly payments for 3 years starting in 2017. But the program was cut short after just 1 year amid a change in government leadership. Hillary Clinton had even considered running her 2016 presidential campaign on a platform including UBI, according to her memoir, What Happened. But she couldn't figure out a reasonable way to pay for it. Clinton wrote in her memoir, "We decided it was exciting but not realistic and left it on the shelf." Clinton isn't the only one to come to the conclusion that America may not be ready for such a large-scale program.
To me, the basic responsibility of our society, of our government, is to make sure that there's a job for everybody who's able and willing to work. Then the concerns about UBI wouldn't be there.
One common concern about UBI is that people might be less motivated to work if their basic needs are taken care of by the state. A recent UBI pilot program in Finland has fueled those concerns. For 2 years, starting in 2017, about 2,000 unemployed people received €560 a month. Preliminary results from the first year show that the money had a very positive effect on well-being. Recipients reported better health, confidence, focus, and less stress than unemployed people who didn't receive any income support. But the cash handouts did not boost employment, as proponents had hoped it would. UBI recipients and non-recipients worked about the same number of days in the first year of the experiment. However, there's also evidence to support UBI proponents, who say cash handouts could spur more entrepreneurship and innovation. That's what Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg seems to think. He spoke about UBI during Harvard's commencement in 2017.
If I had to support my family growing up instead of having the time to learn how to code, if I didn't know that I was going to be fine if Facebook didn't work out, then I wouldn't be standing up here today. We should have a society that measures progress not just by economic metrics like GDP, but by how many of us have a role we find meaningful. We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
That financial cushion can have a big impact in developing countries. That's what happened during a 2011 UBI experiment conducted among impoverished communities in the state of Madhya Pradesh in India. Many recipients used their financial cushion to try new ventures. The 1.5-year experiment included over 6,000 recipients. Adults received between 200 and 300 rupees per month, about $5 at the time, while children got between 100 and 150 rupees a month, or between $2 and $3. The additional income allowed some recipients to give up low-wage labor in order to invest in and work on their own farms. The study in India also found many people took on a second form of work and that they worked longer hours in general. While the merits of UBI in wealthier countries are somewhat mixed, it can make a larger impact in developing economies with extreme poverty.
If somebody is already very poor and this person's existing income falls well short of what is really needed for a minimum standard of living, then having a helping hand helps, but it does not cause any slack in this person's approach to how, he or she is going to either earn money or spend it.
In comparison, someone from the middle class may already have basic needs taken care of.
So for this person, all the risks of basically the money not being spent perhaps in the most essential items or high impact items, or this causing people to cut back on their work, I would say at least theoretically the concerns would be more.
The United States is following suit with a few small-scale UBI pilot programs of its own. Starting in 2016, the research arm of startup accelerator Y Combinator ran a UBI experiment in Oakland, California, as a test leading up to a planned larger-scale program in 2 undisclosed states, where 1,000 people will receive $1,000 a month for 3 years. Starting January 2019, the Magnolia Mothers Trust began giving 20 African-American Mississippi moms who live below the federal poverty line $1,000 a month for 1 year. The Magnolia Mothers Trust was formed by a nonprofit in partnership with the Economic Security Project, which is co-chaired by Facebook co-founder Chris Hughes. Now policymakers are closely watching the first government-led UBI experiment to kick off in the U.S., in the once bankrupt town of Stockton, California. 130 Stockton residents began receiving $500 a month starting in February 2019. The program is slated to last 18 months. And so far, the results seem promising.
We're hearing stories of mothers who are able to buy school supplies for their children. We're hearing people that are able to actually find jobs because they got to spend some time off from their retail work to apply for jobs that are higher paying.
While the UBI experiments have had mixed results, they have changed the conversation around the meaning of work.
I don't think it would be conducive to society to say, here, this is yours, no matter what. If you don't even want to try, you still get the same. But I would also add that contributing through work is not the only way to contribute.
Yang says as more and more jobs are lost to automation, we need to redefine the meaning of work.
My wife is at home with our 2 boys, one of whom is autistic. Right now, the market values her work at 0. GDP values her work at 0. Instead of thinking about it as working more, working less, we should think about it in a way to help broaden the definition of work. We need to think bigger about what work means and what we value.